When you sit down to play Dungeons and Dragons, one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make is your class. It shapes how you fight, how you explore the world, and how you talk your way through or out of trouble. Most campaigns never reach level 20, but when they do, things get wild. At that point, you're no longer just an adventurer, you're a legend. You're shrugging off damage that would flatten armies, casting spells that rewrite reality, or deleting enemies from the battlefield before they even understand what's happening. But here's the thing, not all classes scale the same way to level 20. Some absolutely explode in power, dominating combat while still bringing insane utility and flexibility outside of it. Others, well, they still work, but they have to fight a lot harder to keep up. In this video, we're ranking the level 20 classes in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition 2024, looking at combat power, versatility, consistency, skills, magic, and overall team value. This isn't about what's playable. Everything is. It's about which classes truly become monsters at max level. So let's break it all down and see who really rules the game at level 20. I'm quickly moving on to the video and I'm ranking level 20 classes in Dungeons & Dragons. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. The level 20 classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Ranger. Some classes reach level 20 and feel like living legends. And then there is the Ranger who somehow trips over their own spell list on the way to greatness. Back in original 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, Ranger was almost a meme for being the weakest class. And yes, the 2024 rules refresh did try to help. On paper, things look better. Subclasses are stronger, abilities are cleaner, and Hunter's Mark is clearly meant to be the beating heart of the class. The problem is that this heart takes up your concentration slot, and at level 20, that is a huge ask. Even though Hunter's Mark can no longer be broken by damage at higher levels, it still locks you out of some of the most exciting concentration spells in the entire game. And this is where the Ranger's design really starts to hurt. Spells like Swift Quiver should be a level 20 Ranger's moment to shine, but using them means giving up Hunter's Mark, which then shuts down major class features like Favored Enemy, Precise Hunter, and even the Foe Slayer Capstone. So you are constantly choosing between your best spells and your core class mechanics, which is a choice no other level 20 class struggles with this much. Yes, Ranger is absolutely better than it used to be, and some of its subclasses are genuinely fantastic now. But this strange obsession with Hunter's Mark holding everything together turns into a design flaw at the very edge of play. Sadly, that is why the 2024 Ranger still ends up sitting comfortably and somewhat tragically in D tier. The level 20 classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Barbarian and Rogue. At level 20, Barbarians feel less like adventurers and more like natural disasters that learn how to hold an axe. With absurdly high strength and constitution hitting 24, they tear through enemies with massive attack bonuses, brutal damage, and a hit point pool that looks straight up unfair. If something is standing in front of a Barbarian, it is probably not standing there for long. The problem is that very specific phrase, standing in front of them. Barbarians live and die by melee combat, and if they cannot physically reach their target, all that power starts to feel very situational. That limitation exposes the cracks pretty quickly. Barbarians have almost no meaningful ranged options, their wisdom and intelligence saving throws are usually terrible, and outside of combat, their skill versatility is extremely limited. Crowd control, mind-affecting spells, or simply flying enemies can turn a terrifying level 20 Barbarian into a very angry spectator. They are the ultimate one-trick pony, and to be fair, they perform that trick better than almost anyone else in Dungeons & Dragons. But when the situation does not line up with that trick, their weaknesses become impossible to ignore, which is why they land firmly in C tier. Rogues, on the other hand, have almost the exact opposite problem. When it comes to skills, no one does it better. At level 20, Rogue walks into a room and basically tells the Dungeon Master which ability checks still matter. Defensive tools like evasion and uncanny dodge keep them alive far longer than you would expect, and stroke of luck granting a guaranteed natural 20 once per short rest is absolutely ridiculous. Combine that with sneak attack, and a rogue can delete a single important target at just the right moment. But once combat scales up, rogues start to struggle. They have almost no area of effect damage, which makes fights against large groups of enemies feel awkward and inefficient. On top of that, their only built-in debuff options usually come at the cost cost of sneak attack dice, which is their primary source of damage. Other classes like the Bard or the Fighter may not reach the Rogue's extreme highs in skill checks or single target burst, but they also do not carry nearly as many trade-offs. That balance of incredible strengths paired with very visible weaknesses is exactly what keeps Rogues, much like Barbarians, locked into C tier at level 20. The level 20 classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Artificer, Scion, and Warlock. B tier is where things get interesting because these classes are absolutely good. They just never quite cross that invisible line into, this is broken and I love it. Take the Artificer for example. Reprinted in Eberron, Forge of the Artificer, this class is basically the group's magical engineer, handing out magic items like they are party favors and tailoring gear to exactly what the team needs. At level 20, an Artificer can feel incredibly impactful before combat even starts, simply by how well prepared the party is. Things get even sillier with the improvements to spell storing items. Suddenly, your homunculus servant is not just a cute helper, but a flying delivery system for spells like haste, slow, or fireball. That means consistent damage, powerful buffs, strong debuffs, and even bending the rules by effectively running multiple concentration effects at once. The downside is that, despite all this cleverness, Artificers still lack that raw magical punch you get from full casters. Even with amazing features like Flash of Genius and Soul of Artifice, they can feel a step behind Wizards and Bards in pure power. Subclass design does not help much either. Outside of Battlesmith, many Artificer subclasses feel underwhelming, especially at level 20, where expectations are sky high. They are fantastic problem solvers and support monsters, but when it comes to ending encounters decisively, Artificers sometimes feel like they brought a toolbox to a dragon fight. Useful? Absolutely. Explosive? Not quite enough for A tier. Then we have the Scion, a class that is fascinating almost entirely because of how weird it is. Telekinesis, telepathy, body modification, teleportation. Scions cover some very specific fantasy niches that no other class quite hits the same way. At level 20, a Scion feels alien, flexible, and creative, especially in narrative-heavy campaigns where those powers can shine outside of combat. The issue is that their mechanical ceiling is a bit lower than you might hope. The Scion spell list is more limited than what the Bard or Wizard gets, and Psionic disciplines, while flavorful, do not hit the same power level as Sorcerer meta magic. On top of that, the Scion has only appeared in Dungeons & Dragons Unearthed Arcana so far, meaning it is not officially released. There is real potential here, and with some buffs before publication, Scion could absolutely climb higher than B tier. Finally, we arrive at the Warlock, one of the most modular and interestingly designed classes in all of Dungeons & Dragons. Short rest spell slot recovery means at level 20, Warlock almost always has something left in the tank, especially with Eldritch Master letting them recharge even faster once per day. The problem is longevity. Warlocks struggle with high-level spell versatility, their spell list is relatively narrow, and their scaling past level 11 feels weaker compared to other full casters. That is why Warlocks are infamous as multi-class dips instead of full level 20 commitments. Amazing design, incredible customization, but just a few flaws keep them comfortably locked into B tier. The level 20 classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, and Monk. A tier is where classes stop merely surviving level 20 and start actively swinging the entire campaign in their favor. Clerics and Druids sit right at the top of this tier, and honestly, it is hard to argue with that placement. As full spellcasters, both classes gain access to some of the most game-changing magic in Dungeons & Dragons, even without normal access to Wish. A single, well-timed mass heal from a Cleric can completely erase an enemy's most devastating turn and reset the fight like it never happened. Druids bring a different kind of chaos to the table. Shape change alone is enough to redefine encounters, letting them steal some of the most terrifying monster abilities in the game, including a Dragon's Breath weapon. On top of that, smart use of Wild Shape makes Druids absurdly hard to kill, especially for Circle of the Moon. Burning through multiple pools of hit points at level 20 turns them into walking endurance tests that enemies rarely win. Clerics also quietly gained one of the biggest glow-ups in Dungeons & Dragons 2024. Greater Divine Intervention gives them limited access to Wish, which is already ridiculous, and if you are playing an Arcana Domain Cleric, that access can become permanent. Combine that with their already incredible spell list, strong armor options, and battlefield control, and you have a class that can heal, nuke, support, and rewrite reality when it really matters. Both classes benefit massively from being wisdom spellcasters. High wisdom means perception and insight checks are almost always on your side, making clerics and druids incredibly hard to surprise or deceive. They do not just dominate combat, they control the flow of exploration and social encounters as well, which is exactly what you want from an A-tier level 20 class. Fighters are the biggest comeback story of the 2024 rules, and it is not even close. In original 5th edition, they would not have sniffed A-tier, but the new design finally gives them the tools they always needed. Tactical Mind lets fighters stay relevant in skill checks, closing a long-standing gap between martials and casters outside of combat. The new and improved Indomitable is where things really click. Instead of shrugging and feeling against powerful spells, fighters can now actually stand their ground against debilitating effects that used to end encounters for them instantly. Add in the ability to unleash 8 attacks in a single round, twice per short rest, and the fighter becomes a constant, terrifying presence on the battlefield, especially when paired with weapon mastery. Monks also benefit hugely from the 2024 overhaul. Stunning Strike no longer completely fizzles on a successful save, instead applying a debilitating debuff that even legendary resistance cannot fully ignore. That alone makes monks far more reliable in high-level play, where bosses used to laugh them off. What really pushes the monk into A tier though is their level 20 stat boost. A +4 bonus to both dexterity and wisdom often results in an armor class of at least 24, sometimes higher. A max level monk can dodge attacks more easily than many paladins and fighters in full plate and shields, all while sprinting across the battlefield like a blur. Fast, deadly, and finally durable enough to matter, the monk earns its place in A tier. The level 20 classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Bard, Paladin, Sorcerer, and Wizard. S tier is where the gloves come off and the rules of reality start feeling more like polite suggestions. At level 20, the power gap between spellcasters and everyone else becomes impossible to ignore, and 9th level spells are the main reason why. There are plenty of absurdly strong spells in Dungeons & Dragons, but nothing warps the game quite like Wish. Ignoring casting times, material components, and even spell list restrictions, Wish is basically a dungeon master's migraine in spell form. With Wish, fights can end before they properly begin. You can flood the battlefield with a massive tsunami, instantly bring a fallen ally back with resurrection, or casually create a simulacrum or clone with no setup. In some cases, you can even hand your entire party a free short rest in the middle of combat by replicating Prayer of Healing. That level of flexibility is absurd, and it is exactly why every full caster that naturally gains Wish earns an immediate ticket to S tier. Bards somehow manage to be unfair even by spellcaster standards. They get access to Wish, can cherry pick the best spells in the entire game, and still keep skill bonuses that rival the Rogue. Add Bardic Inspiration into the mix, and they are boosting allies, dominating social encounters, and rewriting combat all at the same time, often before subclasses even enter the conversation. Sorcerers take a different route to the same destination. Their spell list may be more limited, but meta magic lets them break the rules in ways other casters can only dream about. In Dungeons & Dragons 2024, innate sorcery pushes this even further, turning sorcerers into raw magical powerhouses. On top of that, both bards and sorcerers are charisma casters, meaning they absolutely dominate the social pillar of the game while also destroying encounters. Wizards are almost boring in comparison, and that says everything about how strong they are. They did not receive many flashy upgrades in the 2024 rules, mostly because they never needed them. With the largest spell list in the game, a level 20 wizard has an answer for nearly any situation sitting somewhere in their spellbook. As long as the dungeon master is not overly stingy with spell scrolls and gold, a wizard becomes a walking archive of solutions. Control, damage, utility, battlefield manipulation, reality bending, it is all there. Wizards do not rely on gimmicks, they rely on preparation, which at level 20 is terrifyingly effective. Then there is the Paladin, the one class in S tier that feels like it accidentally wandered in from another list. It is only a half caster and does not get Wish, but Aura of Protection alone earns its place here. A +5 bonus to all saving throws for the entire party is massive when fighting endgame monsters with save DCs pushing 27. Even though Divine Smite was toned down in Dungeons & Dragons 2024, Paladins remain indispensable. Their party-wide defensive utility, combined with incredibly powerful level 20 subclass capstones that transform how they play, keeps them firmly in S tier. They may not rewrite reality with spells, but they make sure everyone else survives long enough to do it, and at level 20, that is just as broken. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.